Please join your palms and bow. I vow to deliver innumerable sentient beings of self-nature. I vow to cut off endless vexations of self-nature. I vow to master limitless approaches to Dharma of self-nature. I vow to attain supreme Buddhahood of self-nature. Welcome to you all. This is a class on no mind or just mind. This is something that is a theme that runs through Chan Buddhism and is also essential in terms of Mahayana Buddhism, not only in Chan Buddhism, but in all parts of Mahayana, including the Tibetan practice, in particular, the Dzogchen practice. What we're going to do today is not try to go through a scholastic way of approaching it, as much as a one that's practical in terms of how we can work with it and how it defines how we practice in our daily lives and how we practice when we sit on the cushion. You will find a lot of references or tips as to how one sits in meditation in this kind of an idea of what initially appeared as one mind samadhi or single-minded purpose, and evolved to just mind through to no mind. It is essentially all the same, except that along the way, when people began to get attached to the idea of just mind, then there was a shift to say no mind, so that one could not have an idea of something to serve as a platform. It, in fact, is what is one enters, and I use the term one enter in a samsaric way to enter into Chan. And when we enter into Chan, there really isn't any entering with it, because everything is mind. Everything is this idea of non-duality. All of these things, they all fit together, and they fit together in terms of the idea of no self, also of impermanence of things, and the concept of suffering or nirvana, which are the three seals, and depending on who is presenting them, the third seal is either suffering or nirvana. But essentially, the Mahaprajna Paramita Sutra says there is no suffering and there's no nirvana as well, so that we end up ending up in the same position of just mind. I wanted to see where we start, because there's a bunch of things I want to try to weave together here in terms of this. The term no mind is one which is one where we could say in Sanskrit asita or asitka, and it's often referred to as no mental state. This is not quite correct. Mind is not a mental state. Mental states appear in mind, but mind is not distinguished or has a characteristic of a mental state as a permanent characteristic. These are appearances that appear within mind. So the idea when we say no mind, it does not mean that there aren't appearances in mind, or one uses their mind to say, oh, I will pick up this paper, I will put it down now. That certainly is using your mind. But the thing is there's a couple of issues or presumptions when we say that certainly is using your mind, because is it my mind that picked up the paper and put it down, or is it just mind functioning? So we cannot say for a certainty that this paper and the hand that picked it up and put it down belong to a particular entity. It was just a function that is occurring. But because we become attached to certain things, we think that this is happening from the viewpoint of a life or a being or something in this way, in which we see things from a viewpoint of subject and object or duality. It is possible to pick up the paper and put it down without having a thought. Well, what is this when we talk about this no thought? Is this wu wu yin? And we have to back up for a little bit, because in the beginning there was this idea of of no mind, wu xin, and wu xin, HSIN in Chinese means no mind, but then Huai came up with Wu Yin, which is no thought, which is a further elaboration of that, to say that one of them you could say that there is no mind, but the no thought is an examination or a clarification, as much as it can be in the samsaric realm, that there is no one to entertain a thought. Although the thoughts can rise and fall. I have a thought of giving the lecture, and then I'm doing the lecture now. When I finish, I will have the thought of not lecturing, but in between, there are thousands of thoughts that arise, but then they're just immediately put down so that one does not cling to it. And so in this way, even we cannot say that there is a one that can cling to it, because it's just simply the mind functioning in a perfect way. And so it is this that what we practice in Chan. And again, I'm going to be jumping around a little bit in accordance of how it begins to come out. I wanted to read something from Huang Po, and circa, I think it's the eighth century. And he said this, he said, mind is no mind of conceptual thought. So when he's saying mind, it's not the mind of conceptual thought, meaning when we talk about conceptual thought is I am thinking, I am doing, I am driving, I am washing my bowl, I am speaking, whatever. If there's no conceptual thought, it is still possible that the mind can sit and do the things in a proper way without interference from the idea of conceptual thinking or the idea of duality or discriminating or differentiating in what one is doing. One is in that moment liberated to be able to express and demonstrate mind freely in this moment. It's actually very wonderful, because you don't get in the way. So we have this idea, we have to understand, okay, this is a conceptual thought. This is where the ship runs aground right away. But if we don't, and we're able to navigate through these passes and not bump into this and bump into that, then it works just right. And it is completely detached from form. So it isn't that I'm sitting here as Gilbert and presenting a lecture. There's just simply, we could say, a heart that is expressing this information. It's expressing it in a way in accordance with causes and conditions, and understanding that it can have an appropriate effect and begin to balance the environment as it does it. So there isn't any necessary form there, because we understand all of the form itself is empty. So Buddhas and sentient beings do not differ at all if you can only rid yourselves of conceptual thought, you will have accomplished everything. This is why it's talked about of non-conceptual wakefulness. This is what he's saying here. If you can do that, that's called non-conceptual wakefulness. You are awake, mind is awake, mind is functioning without duality, without locality, um, and um, and and temporally the same thing. This is not very easy for us to do because we're constantly advised, don't bump into that wall, you have to go down the hallway, or you have to do this. There's certain barriers here that you have to navigate, and certain time you have to do it within, and so you have to function in accordance with that. When we're in samsara, it's just as what the Bible says, render unto Caesar's what is Caesar, so render unto samsara what is samsara. We understand that, but it doesn't necessarily curtail our ability to use this mind in a liberated way, irregardless of the limitations that we have navigating through this limited world that we find ourselves in, understanding that this world is still malleable, it's still a dream, still we can mold it in the way we want. And our heart then sets on a course to mold the environment in a very productive way to uplift humanity and create a pure land here. All of this is a liberation of being able to do this in a very good way. And if it just has to do with making a meal, so be it. The mundane ordinary is the same. There's nothing superior to one cutting vegetables for their meal, and one that is presenting the Dharma. All things in due time, and they happen in this way. But if you students of the way do not rid yourselves of conceptual thought, in a flash, even though you strive for eon after eon, you will never accomplish it. Enmeshed in the victorious practices of the three vehicles, you will be unable to attain enlightenment. Nevertheless, the realization of one mind may come after a shorter or longer period. There are those who, upon hearing this teaching, rid themselves of conceptual thought in a flash. There are others who do this after following through the 10 beliefs, 10 stages, 10 activities, 10 stages of the Bodhisattva's practice. Whether they transcend conceptual thought by longer or shorter, the result is a state of being. There is no pious practicing, no action of realizing. And this is when I mention that when there's no pious practicing, it isn't in this way. We are constantly demonstrating all these 10 stages that he just mentioned, but not sacredly or saintly. It is just simply done via function. This is the first level. The second level is trying to accord ourselves with this pious practice and trying to act like we are a bodhisattva rather than demonstrating it moment to moment without having the idea as I am a bodhisattva demonstrating this, just simply letting the mind rest. And it's resting in this wisdom, which will automatically reflect in body, speech, and mind. So it's very, very important. And I ran into this because I've been talking about this quite a bit, emphasizing the demonstration of the practice over a practice that is one that we're trying to accord with something and try to earn our merit badges or reach the 6th this or the 7th that or whatever. And this too is Huang Po, and he says, as to performing the 6 paramitas, which I've been talking about quite a bit lately, the perfections of wisdom, a vast number of similar practices are gaining merits as countless as the sands of the Ganges, since you're fundamentally complete. in every respect, you should not try to supplement that perfection by such meaningless practices. Wow. He went right to it and says, it's like putting, if you already have been given a ice cream sundae, and for those who don't know what an ice cream sundae is, generally it's 3 scoops of ice cream, and they have nuts and whipped cream and chocolate and maybe strawberry syrup. And then on top, there's a cherry. Hopefully, I'm not making any of you guys hungry. But in any case, he's saying to practice in a way where you're trying to mimic this is like putting an extra cherry on top. You don't need that. You just need to do it. All this Dharma, and you'll see in a moment, it weaves together so beautifully. When there is occasion for them, perform them. And when the occasion is past, remain quiescent. If you are not absolutely convinced that the mind is the Buddha, and if you are attached to forms, practices, meritorious performances, your way of thinking is false and is quite incompatible with the way. So we have to have this very strong faith in mind and faith in your own practice and faith in the Buddha to make this work. When we have this faith, that faith is demonstrated everywhere. Every single moment you demonstrate this faith. You don't have to say, I want to do this because I want to meet the Buddha. And what will you do if you meet the Buddha? You know, can you sign my shirt? You know, can you bless me? You know, or whatever. Master Ling Chi said, if you ever met somebody of the way along the road, don't ask them of the way. You can figure that one out. If you, the mind is the Buddha. There are no other Buddhas other than mind. It is bright and spotless as the void, having no form or appearance whatever. To make use of your mind to think conceptually is to leave the substance and attach yourselves to form. The ever-existing Buddha is not a Buddha of form or attachments. Why the Diamond Sutra says you cannot know the Buddha from its 32 marks. To practice the 6 paramitas is thereby to advance by stages, but the ever-existent Buddha is not a Buddha of stages, only awake to this one mind, and there is nothing whatsoever to attain. This is the real Buddha. The Buddha and all sentient beings are the one mind and nothing else. Again, we're talking about one mind. We can also say it's no mind as it began to be practiced and it was began to be changed with the latter patriarchs talking about Buddhism. And let me see. I'll go somewhere else for a moment with this. I want to mention a little bit about Dao Xin, the 4th patriarch, and this was some of his writings, which was very good in terms of this. And he says some people can see clearly that their mind is lucid and pure like a bright mirror. So when we say you can see it's lucid and pure like a bright mirror. This is why I'm always bringing the idea of when one meditates that we meditate in a way where it's like a mirror looking into a mirror, because there's no thinking involved in this. And this idea of a mirror looking into a mirror is actually non-conceptual, because there's nothing for you in your samsaric conceptualization that could possibly understand or penetrate the idea of an infinite mirror being that which projects itself to mirrors. And so if you can get this on the first go round, do so and hang on to that, but without hanging on to it, without abiding to it, but just use that as your guidepost in terms of this. They said some need a year to practice, and then the mind becomes lucid and pure, and others need 3 or 5 years, and then the mind is lucid and clear. Some can obtain enlightenment just by listening to others. That's not bad. There's a lot of you that actually can get a realization listening to somebody if you listen in a sincere way. If you listen in a conceptualization way, then it's not so easy. But if you listen to it without the idea of wanting to get anything but just let it go through you, then you can actually enter by this type of a practice. The Nirvana Sutra says the nature of the mind of beings is like a pearl which falls into the water and the water is muddy. So the pearl becomes hidden. When the water is pure, the pearl is revealed. This is the idea of a pure mirror facing a pure mirror. And when one is sitting to meditate, or later on you're going to find out that in everything that you do, you take this mirror off the cushion and you see everything as a mirror mind. And you realize that the practice has very little to do with just crossing your leg, but it's actually a practice field in which you can get up off that cushion and use this mirror mind with whatever you encounter. When you're sitting in meditation, watch carefully to know when your consciousness starts to move. Consciousness is always moving and flowing according to its comings and goings. We must all be aware of it. Again, here he's using this we, but he's actually referring to mind. He just can't say that because people won't understand that. But wherever you hear this we here, just put in mind. Mind has to be aware of this. And use the wisdom of a diamond to control and rule it. So this wisdom of a diamond, he's referring to this, that one, it's very hard, and it's very clear that that's the beauty of a diamond. Let's say an internally flawless diamond, is it's clear. One facet is no different than any other facet. If you looked into the diamond will shine brightly through all the facets. Since it's just like a plant, there's nothing to know. To know there is nothing, to know that there's nothing to know is the wisdom to know everything. This is the Dharma gate of one form of a bodhisattva. So this one form of a bodhisattva is that we understand that a bodhisattva makes a vow to deliver others before themselves, but they make a vow to deliver illusory sentient beings. This Dharma gate of the one form of the Bodhisattva understands that everything is originally empty. It sees things in this way, but we cannot call something that it's even mind or even one form. It is all just non-conceptual. The 100,000 gates of the awakened teaching all return to the one heart, the source that of the countless sublime practices all come from this one mind. And this again, I mentioned that Master Sheng used to refer to this one mind, this heart mind, as the hub. So all of this that we understand from the Heart Sutra comes from this essence of Buddha nature. This Buddha nature is filled with compassion, unbridled compassion, and that is the hub of uh, of everything. And all the spokes of all the Dharma teachings, they're all connected to this hub. When we understand that, we know that there's no difference between them. They're all there, and they're all connected to this central part, which is mind itself. And because of this, we cannot distinguish it from anything else. The source of the countless sublime practices all come from this one mind. Sublime means to want nothing, to be content, to be in this way. If one is awakened to this and one understands there is no suffering, no cause of suffering, but nevertheless, I have a small pebble in my shoe, then I should engage in the activity to remove that pebble. Even if I don't really know if it's there or not, it just seems to be affecting things. So there is an interest in removing that. Even if it's not my foot that has the pebble in it, it may be your foot that is vexed by this pebble in the shoe. But it matters not. There's no difference. All those spokes return back to the hub. All the precepts and ethical guidelines, the practice of meditation, the gate of primordial wisdom, and all its miraculous manifestations are all your natural possession. All of this belongs to mind. All of these things are there. We are talking about Vairocana. Vairocana is nothing but this primordial wisdom. And all the manifestations of all the Buddhas and all sentient beings, they're not different. They're seen in this way. So when we practice of the meditation is not just simply the meditation of sitting on a cushion. It's more than that. When we practice meditation, we practice in a way that, and I don't see Esther here today, she's traveling, but she made a distinction in the word meditation and wisdom from Huineng's Platform Sutra, and she used another Chinese term to talk about what meditation is, and it was important because it's not limited to just simply sitting on a cushion, and we'll get into that in a moment because it's important for us to understand that meditation is just a controlled environment to practice, but the true practice is getting up off that cushion and seeing if you can maintain the stableness of the mind. Okay. Not separate from your mind, not every type of misfortune and karmic impediment is fundamentally empty and without substantial existence. All causes and effect are similarly dreams and illusions. There are no suffering worlds to escape from, and there is no awakening to search for. The original nature and the outer appearance of humans and all beings are identical. The great way is empty and boundless, free from thought and anxiety. If you have merged with the truth, there is nothing whatsoever that's lacking. What difference is there between yourself and an awakened one? Here, there is not a single teaching left. You are just free to abide in your own spontaneous nature, and that's exactly what it is. When it's really working right, everything that you do is spontaneous. It's free from guilt, it's free from pride, it's free from effort. Spontaneous. It's wonderful. If I let Gilbert command the ship, he'll run it into the ground all the time. He'll either be attracted or be avoiding something and just crashes it. There's no need to contemplate your behavior. This is very important. No need to contemplate your behavior. This is going back to the Shurangama Sutra and Nanda trying to figure out what is his mind. And he's trying to contemplate his mind as if it's something that he, as a samsaric individual, can come to a recognition on. But it isn't in this way. He could never do that. No need to practice purifying austerities. And again, I highlighted this because, again, this goes back to saying no need to build a stairway to heaven. How many steps is it going to take to get there? Free from desires, having a heart without anger or cares. And this is not the cares of a bodhisattva, it's the cares of, I want this, or if you had something, I had a donut, now I care to have another donut. It isn't in this way. Completely at ease and without impediment, free to go in any direction according to the conditions, with no need to deliberately take on any good or evil affairs in walking, standing, sitting, lying down, whatever meets your eyes, is nothing other than the essential source. All of this is just a sublime function of awakening. I truly wish I could share this with you. You have to take that step off that 100-foot pole. But if you do, you will encounter it. Joyful and carefree, this is called Buddha. Now, want to kind of lead up to Hui Ning. And here we're talking about Hongren. And Hongren gave rise to two great Chan masters. The first one was Shen Shu, and Shen Shu was one in which followed him. And Hongren's master was Dao Xin. Dao Xin created the East Mountain tradition, the Northern school, and so Dao Xin and Hongren are very close in the manners in which they teach, and so too was Shen Shu. Shen Shu was more of someone that was embracing the practice, what I would call like a second level practice. Not a bad practice, but nevertheless, it's a secondary practice of trying to accord with things in some form of a pious way. And his other student was one from what's called the Southern tradition, was Hui Ning, the sixth patriarch. And again, to some of you who have not studied too much of Buddha Dharma, I'm kind of giving you that as a filler for historically where this all fits in. And Hui Ning was had encountered this through. Let's see, a couple of them. He had heard a passage of the Diamond Sutra, and essentially, when he heard the passage, he was absolutely stunned by it, and he understood here the key was not to abide. this goes and has its roots in the Perfection of Wisdom Sutra, or the Astashastrika Sutra, which talks about that abiding in non-abiding. And again, this goes directly to mind or no mind, and to no thought, because one does not abide in any of that. One is just simply free to express spontaneously mind in anything, not your mind, not Ananda's mind, but mind itself in any moment, to be able to float with the causes and conditions, and be able to express things in a certain way. And so in his teachings, he I want to read you a little bit of what he said, because he was talking about So Chan. I'm probably mispronouncing that, but So means to sit. So sitting Chan. So he's talking about this sitting Chan, and he's clarifying what it is. And you'd say, well, he's talking about sitting Chan. I thought Wei Ning wasn't a big proponent of sitting meditation. He wasn't, if the manner in which, if you use the definition of sitting meditation as what they call dazu, where you're just simply sitting motionless and just following a method, his idea of this and this meditation and wisdom was much more expansive than the idea of sitting and trying to wipe away thoughts from the mirror. And so let's get into a little bit of what he says in this part. And he says, good friends, in this teaching, from the outset, Dzogchen, sitting meditation, is not meditating on the mind, nor is it meditating on purity. This is not what we call steadfastness, or a persistent state of mindfulness, or what I would call samadhi. If someone speaks of meditating on the mind in itself is an illusion. Truly, if we try to say, okay, where is the mind? No, where's the mind? I have to find the mind. Is it inside, outside, whatever? It confused Ananda to no end. We cannot find it in this way. And he says, because it's itself is an illusion, and as we come to realize that it is only a phantom, we realize there's nothing to be seen. It's like watching the breath. I don't know how many of you watch the breath, but I'd say, watch the breath. What did you see? There's nothing to be seen. And so if someone speaks on meditating on purity, that one's own original nature is pure, but because of false thoughts, his original nature is obscured. If you cast out delusions, then original nature reveals its purity. But if you focus your mind on purity without realizing that your own self-nature is originally pure, delusions of purity will be produced. Since delusion does not exist anywhere, you know that whatever you see is nothing but a delusion. This is what happened when, in the Vilamakritti Sutra, Vilamakritti was expounding on the Dharma, and it was so deep and so wonderful. Everybody was rejoicing after hearing him expound on it. He was expounding on his living room that at that time was accommodating thousands of hearers or listeners at that time. And this one goddess that was there that had remained unseen began to rain flowers over everyone. And everybody was so rejoicing over this raiment of flowers, adornment of flowers from the Dharma that was being presented. But Sariputra, his robe got full of flowers. They were stuck all over him, and he had to try to pull them off. And so the goddess approached him and said, "Why are you doing that? Why are you pulling the flowers off?" He says, "I cannot do this. This is a violation of the Vinaya, because the Vinaya, the rules of monastics. I cannot wear fancy clothes, and my robe is full of flowers, so it looks too fancy." And she says, "This is only your own ignorance that you see these flowers and you see this, the robe, and everything as to be real. You don't see, you look at all the other bodhisattvas, everyone that's here, the flowers simply fall upon the floor. There's no corruption to that. You just simply have to see clearly how things are." But it was difficult for him to see in this way. And in this way, this is uh, what a what this person what he represents us. He represents our idea of trying to stay pure, and the purity is not in this way. And I'll skip a little bit here, and it says, "Now that we know that this is so, um, what is it in this teaching that we call so chan? What is it that when we're learning about this that we call sitting chan?" Um, in this teaching, meditation means being free from obstruction um, everywhere you happen to be. Externally and under all circumstances, do not activate thoughts. Sitting is not to be taken literally here. So they're saying in everything that you do, don't activate these thoughts. In other words, uh, you have to sever the mind that desires continuation. So if you see the donut, don't start thinking about donuts. Sever that thought. You can mention the donuts. I put that donut down a few minutes ago. It seems like I brought it with me now, but only for the sake of showing an example to let it go. Okay. Um, Meditation is to see the original nature within and not to become distracted. This is very, very important. Now let's stop here, time out here. We're going to set this to the side for a moment, and we're going to take you deeper into the practice. Back to the Vilamakritti Sutra, and in this part of the Vilamakritti Sutra, Vilamakritti, who was a householder, very, very rich householder, uh, and was actually even wiser than the Buddha's own disciples, which is pretty darn wise. Um, he was feigning like he was ill, like, "Oh, I don't feel good. I don't feel good. Buddha, I don't feel good. I'm a Buddha." So he's using his mind to communicate with the Buddha to say, "Oh, I don't feel good." So the Buddha's going, Vilamakritti, he's up to something. So I have to send somebody over to inquire about his illness. I can't talk about the whole story, but every once in a while I'll tell portions of it. But this portion really fits here because then you begin to understand what meditation is. And so he went to Sariputra. Sariputra was the elder, so he went to him first because out of respect, he will go to Sariputra first to ask him, go and check on him. But um, Sariputra declined. He didn't want to go. And so let's find out why he didn't want to go. So the Buddha said, "Go visit Vilamakritti and inquire about his illness." Sariputra addressed the Buddha, "World honored one, uh, I dare not accept your instruction to go to inquire about his illness. Why? Uh, I remember once in the past I was sitting in repose beneath a tree. So he was meditating under a tree, like in repose. And Vilamakriti came by and said to me, "Oh, Sariputra, you need not take this sitting in meditation to be sitting in repose." So he's saying, you're sitting there, you're thinking that you're in repose underneath the tree, and you think that this is sitting in repose. This is the repose of Wei Ning. What Wei Ning is talking about now, you understand that Wei Ning was there even though he was illiterate. He knew of Vilamakriti's sutras. He knew of the deepness of this, and he's demonstrating it in the Platform Sutra. And so he says, sitting in repose is not to manifest body and mind in the triple world being the desire realm, the form realm, and the no form realm, and we're in the desire realm. This is sitting in repose. So not to manifest the body here. So if we're sitting and we're sitting with our body, that's why Shifu says, give your mind to the method and the body to the cushion, because the body has nothing to do with sitting in repose. And he says, sitting in repose, to generate the concentration of extinction, so this concentration of extinction of self, while manifesting deportments, this is sitting in repose. So he's saying, when you're generating this concentration of the practice of putting down attachments while manifesting deportments. Manifesting deportments is your actual interaction with people. Here he's specifically referring, because Sariputra is a monastic, to the Vinaya, and the deportments of the Vinaya say you can't do this, you can't do that, you can't do these things. But it's not a prohibition, it's an example of demonstrating the Dharma. There's a difference there, a very, very subtle difference that Sariputra does not understand. But so this is going very, very deep and telling him, look, when you're doing this, you're demonstrating how to, that this practice, you're not just sitting there like in a comatose state, or like someone that's sitting in a refrigerator and then closing the door and being there in the cold dark. It's not in this way. This is not sitting in repose. Not to relinquish the Dharma of enlightenment and yet manifest affairs of ordinary sentient beings, this is sitting in repose. So to do all your general things, but never to go, oh, I'm doing what do we call it, the Dharma of enlightenment? The Dharma of enlightenment. In terms of practicing, you don't think, well, what are you doing? I'm manifesting the Dharma of enlightenment. No, that's not it. It just simply sitting in repose in whatever we're doing, whatever states we encounter, but we are demonstrating them naturally. To have the mind neither abide internally nor locate itself externally, this is sitting in repose. So not to say, oh, my mind, just like if you remember Ananda in the Thurangama Sutra, he's thinking for a while his mind was inside of his head. And so it's not internally, we cannot see it in this way, and we give a locale to mind, and this idea of doing that, it doesn't really make sense, because it still has to interact with that which is external, but we don't see the external as being external and the internal as being internal. There's no locale there. Not in mind, there's no locale. This is just belongs to the dream. The body belongs to the dream. It's like if you're going to Halloween and you rent a costume, you know, what would you go as? You know, Captain America. Um, Maybe not that popular this year, but in any case, um, after Halloween's over, you don't keep the costume, right? You'll get fired from your job if you go like that, or you go as Batman to work. You'll freak everybody out. He's worn that costume for 10 days straight now. No, how many times do you want to wear the costume of a sentient being? I'm sure in the old days they would have used these kind of analogies like 1,000 years if they could rent costumes. Okay. To be unmoved by the 62 mistaken views, yet cultivate the 37 factors of enlightenment, this is sitting in repose. Not to eradicate the afflictions, yet enter into nirvana, this is sitting in repose. Meaning that we don't, in the idea of nirvana, the idea is just utilizing the sublimeness of the mind, but not eschewing or pushing away all of samsara. The bodhisattvas, nevertheless, can reflect nirvanic qualities, even though they're within samsara. It isn't like, oh, well, let's go interview Disan Pusa, the Earth Store Bodhisattva from hell. How do you feel? Like, do you think you'll ever get out of here? You know, and what is Disan Pusa going to say? Oh man, this is hell. It's really tough assignment. I shouldn't have picked this one. Oh my gosh, these people, they're so stupid down here and so bad. They're never going to get out of here. No, that could not possibly be what Disampusa. Disampusa could manifest all these nirvanic qualities or nirvanic qualities, but in the same sense, still be there doing the job. It doesn't affect uh, the the function of the mind at all. Those who are able to sit in this fashion will get the Buddha's seal of approval. And so then at that point, the Buddha went, all right, okay, I'll ask somebody else, because the Sariputra was in that way was just too intimidated by this. And sometimes people are that way. Sometimes they don't want to talk. Sometimes the people that want to talk are the ones that shouldn't be talking. The ones that should be talking are afraid to talk because they're afraid that that they're going to ask something stupid. There's no stupid question. Stupidity is having a question and not asking it when you have a chance. It's very rare to have opportunities to ask questions. And but if one just simply wants to speak to show their level, then they're showing their level. And those who don't want to speak to show their level are also showing their level. Don't have a fear. If you have a question, ask it. There's plenty of questions. I've got like a list of questions, but no, I have to just keep asking the lamppost. But in any case, we just have to see where we're going with this. Okay. So then we're back to Wei Ning's speaking. And what do we call Chan meditation? To be detached from the external form is Chan. Internally, to be free from distraction is meditation. So when we talk about to be detached from this external form, and internally your nature is not distracted, all of these things, this is how we practice. So when we practice in this way, we understand this idea of no mind, or Wu Yin and no thought. Um, all of them, they're all connected. They're connected in a sense of in conformance with the three seals, and um, and you see, even going to the Tathagata Garbha Sutra, the teachings are there. They're deep. They're extremely deep. But in practice, they're simple. We just have to become adept at demonstrating them. Don't have the idea that we're something separate from them or something that we have to aspire to. Just do it, and it will work. Okay, that's it. I will open it up for questions. It's open. Nobody has questions. Nick,
Can you hear me okay, Gilbert?
I can hear you. Yes.
Perfect, thank you. Thank you for the wonderful lecture. I was curious, I might have missed it if you said it during the lecture, but you were mentioning how we mind is transient, that you couldn't realize, like you wouldn't see like, oh, there's mind, there's mind. It's not like a pinpoint to it. So when we speak of awakening, is it more awakening to just the illusory self and what's left over is mind? Or is there still something that you're seeing if there's nothing, if there's not like qualities to mind? Does that make sense?
Yeah. Your question makes sense. It's one where we could say it's always something. As long as we're here, there's always something that's popping up, and it's okay. It's okay. We don't have to make the mind, like disinfected. We don't have to kill off the self. Uh, it's very important for us to understand that. And if you heard my four great vows today, I made the quantum shift and decided I'm going to recite it with of self nature at the end of each of the vows, and that's on purpose because all of this is the self nature of mind. So we do not have to divest ourselves from thoughts or views. We just have to illuminate the mind, as one master said. I think Master Yang Chia said that it it isn't that we don't that the crime is that thoughts arise, but the crime is not noticing soon enough that they've arisen, and that this is important because we when we don't realize that the thoughts are there and that we're generating these sticky thoughts, then the mind is slowing down. It's being dragged down by all of these thoughts, and they're draining the mind power and obscuring your own luminosity. But when you're able to just be able to see that you don't have to make anything go away, you don't have to make anything manifest, just maintain this mind of calmness and clarity. And we understand we're here. I'm in my home, and I look around me and I see um, things that identify me with this world, and I neither good nor bad. I see it. I may have too much of this or too little of that or whatever. These things may be observations or they may be self-deprecating things, and if they are, then that's attaching to whatever I have or I don't have. Um, it is something that we don't have to make those kinds of judgments. We just have to, as was said earlier, be just it, this being, this being that isn't a being of being someplace, somewhere, a being to someone else. It isn't in this way. Apart from mind, there is no other being, and it's not a being a sentient being that has the idea, the illusory idea of an individual self-existence. So it is just something that's there that is clear about why this being is where it's at what the causes and conditions were that brought this being into being there. But we understand that this being that thinks it's a being is not truly a being, but being in this world of beings without that kind of an identification or locale is just what precisely where one could be. Again, this one is not the one of an individual, but just of mind itself. So if you practice in this way, it changes things. I understand your question, and you can't put in a samsaric kind of an identification to what you should be doing there. Just keep practicing. You'll see little by little it'll become clearer and quieter. And even in the midst of a great problems or whatever, you'll find a way to make everybody connect. And yesterday I was at a family event of a memorial for a family member, and I got up to speak, and I wanted to do something to kind of bring everybody into the same thing rather than just simply talk about the person. So I had everybody stand up, and I had everybody hold hands. And so everybody around each table was holding the hand of the other person. And I said, you see these people that you're holding hands with? No, there's no telling how long they're going to be here. Treasure them now, love them. And it was something that really hit everybody, because there's a young person holding an old person's hand, realizing this person maybe in 1 year, 2 years or so, they may not be here. And it's something that's really impactful for people to do that and bring them to the present moment, to bring them to this moment of where we are so clear about what's happening. And I brought that moment of clarity to the people. I lent it to them, and it was very, very stunning. And it spoke more words than I could possibly speak. After that, I just sat down. There was nothing more I could possibly say. But it is this moment that when we interact with other people, this moment of clarity, that we see things just as they are, and just as saying, love these people because they may not be here the next time around. And it's true. I was speaking to one of my cousins. He's actually older than me. He's 81 years old, and he was talking to me about in the next 5 years, from 81 to 86, the actuarial tables will show that his chances of getting to 86 aren't that great. I forgot what it was, but it was like maybe a 20% chance to get there. And so he's running into his own mortality in that moment. But he's at a place now in his mind that I think he was more able to handle that kind of an idea. But nevertheless, it's kind of like, when you get to a certain age, we don't buy green bananas anymore. I might buy a tree for the next generation, but you see things as they are. That's all you have to do. You don't have to worry about anything else. It'll all come and fit together for you. Okay, Sal.
Amitofo, Gilbert.
I actually feel bad raising my hand now because that was actually really interesting. I hope I didn't cut it short. But thank you again for the lecture. The material was some of my personal favorite, especially the Huang Po. Um, that was some of the first Chan literature I think I'd found, and I actually my question pertains to it too. Is uh, to me that the way Huang Po speaks there is like just pure right view. It's so direct. It's so clear. Like when talking about the paramitas and how there's no need to cultivate them, but that doesn't mean we don't practice. It means that the practice, the viewpoint with right view shifts from cultivation to demonstration. And I know that's something that you've talked about extensively. My question is, I've often run into practitioners back home where it feels like no matter how I try to clarify that or bring right view to the conversation, um, they take it as saying like you don't need to practice. Like I don't know how to further clarify. It is not that we don't need to practice. It is the shifting of the viewpoint. You know, instead of cultivation, demonstration, things like that. But I feel like I'm failing to um, correctly explain that or clarify that. So I was wondering if I could ask for your advice.
Yeah, it's not very easy to do that because 99.999% of the people are taught on second level. The reason I brought up what I was bringing up, and kind of implicit in all I was saying was that it was showing this direct route, which is all part of our Chan school, which is the sudden illumination and this direct method that's there, and at the higher levels where some of the people haven't even um, looked up that high to see how high that is, even though it's immediate. But I mean, to them, they think it's so far beyond where they're at. And but this is where we're always in this. And when you see, for instance, Villa McCready talking about what true meditation is, and it's being reflected in the practice by Hui Ming, these are all the links that come together that we say this is right view, and the quote that I was using in terms of showing that this other type of a practice is a secondary practice. It's in a lot of sutras. The more you study, you'll see it. But it's okay if the people they don't understand that. It's okay. Let them practice that they want to do. We'll catch them on the next time around. But it's difficult, and the ego is also a difficult thing because people don't like what they don't understand. And when they understand it, they're dismissive against the person that's presenting that, like killing the messenger. But there are some trains of thought saying, the people have to study this and this and this before you can teach them this. I don't agree with that, even though I've seen that in the sutras. I don't agree with it because I've also seen the sutras such as a demonstration of the inconceivable state of Buddhahood, um, where they're talking about you should let the novice know, take care of the novice by keeping them right view. It's okay. It's not going to be everybody's cup of tea, and it's okay. You just do what you can. You remain. If this is where you're at, you don't become um, a Judas. I don't know if you know the story of the Judas where he denied the being friends. Do you know Jesus? No, I never heard of him. Who? Jehoshaphat? No, Jesus. No, I don't know. No, we don't do that. But if again, we don't have to proselytize as well. If the people are ready for it, fine. You have to elevate your skill set to be able to make it palatable to those who aren't able to do that. And what I did yesterday, and I use that example, was I elevated my skill set for people to feel something, and I kind of put an extra oomph in there um, that um, that enabled them to feel something special out of that. Now, can they do that all the time or by themselves? Probably not, but at least they'll remember that. And just remember that part. At least they'll remember it. You pick them up on the next time around. It may be next week or it may be next lifetime, but you just keep practicing in this way. I need to mention something. Michael, you found these things from the Daily Zen. Okay. I did not pick up anything from the Daily Zen. I want to make that clear. Now I know what this is coming from because I got somebody from the Daily Zen that was very accusatorial and very insulting to me, saying that I was lifting their stuff without crediting them. I'm going, I don't have to credit somebody that's using things that are in the public domain. I'm not plagiarizing anything. I'm saying these are the sutras, but the person got really bent out of shape. So if it comes from the Daily Zen, I'll tell you, I guarantee you, I'm not using them for any quotes at all. Okay, my sources are not Daily Zen. I promised them I wouldn't do that. They say, "Oh no, you can use this, just credit." Come on, I don't want to be bothered with that. So anyway, take them down because I did not get it from them. They may have a source because, of course, if you're reading Guanyin, you can find 500, 5,000 sources of Guanyin's platform sutra online. Okay, but I just wanted to make sure that because I just had that exchange with a person, and I told her I would not use her sources, not that it's direct quotes, from them, because it's not that way. It's just public domain things. But she wanted me to cite every time I use Daily Zen, but I'm not using it. Okay, so I'm putting that online so in case she does some kind of a search, scholastic search or whatever, and bring it up and mention it, that they'll see that this was not the thing, and I have all my papers showing nothing says Daily Zen on it. All right, off the pulpit there for a moment, but I just want to mention that. So now I know where it came from. I'm going, I don't remember using your stuff, but there it is right there, exhibit 1 and exhibit 3. So, but I didn't use it, so that's okay. Yeah, I'm not saying anything other than just be mindful about that. Because I know we want to do that and we want to help the things, but it was no, I don't want to cause any problem with anybody or be I don't know if you can be accused of plagiarizing something that's a public domain like Hui Ning and then saying, you got it from this source where you could get it from any source. This is a perfect example of how you can get a source, and I'm certainly not plagiarizing them because I'm quoting them for who was the author of it. Daily Zen was not the author. So okay. All right, any other questions? I'm getting cranky in my old age. Okay, Shloka.
Hi, Gilbert. Thank you for the lecture. I also had a question about sharing the Dharma with others, particularly younger people who perhaps haven't encountered the Dharma in this lifetime yet. Basically, I'm back in graduate school and I was trying to find the Buddhist student organization last week at like a fair. I couldn't find them, but instead I found the Baha'i Club. And it's a really sweet group who wanted to host these weekly gatherings called Uplifting Conversations, and just where people talk about philosophy and spirituality and life. And so even though it wasn't a Buddhist group, I decided to go yesterday because you always say that we can still create an affinity with others. And it turned out to be a group of young undergrads who are just open and looking for something deeper. And for the first time, I found myself I happened to be the oldest in this setting with perspective to offer. And it felt so wonderful to share. And I was also fumbling for the right words. And I remembered what Robert said last week about how he was just channeling you and the Sangha. And so trying to do that and without using too many Buddhist terms because this is the Baha'i Club. And anyway, I just think I'd like to go back to these gatherings when I can, and just wondering what your advice is for how to make more friends, like you said last week, and I guess share the Dharma in a I guess a secular way that's beneficial to others.
Yeah, one of the things in Singapore, for instance, there's a group. They're a very well-established group that's Theravadan, and they absolutely love me. I mean, they love the wisdom and the compassion. They identify with that, and they don't identify that, oh, this is a Mahayana person. You know, when I go there, sometimes I might see a monastic there, and they're kind of dismissive of me. You know, like buzz by. They would never bother to come and say hi, how are you, or whatever. You know, they don't see you as somebody that way. But all of the people do, and they're wonderful, wonderful people, and they are great practitioners and very open. So it doesn't matter who you're talking to, you know, from whatever religion, you know, wisdom is wisdom. And when you talk from wisdom, you talk about the things that draw you close to other people, that develop an affinity with the people. You know, you don't go too deep, but you posit things to them to make them think about what if, or what is mine. You know, what do you think about mine? And give them little exercises to play, such as the one from the bull and the nut and the buffalo and the mountain, those kinds of ones, or apple, or what in mine. Just different things to let them kind of think about things and plant the seeds. You don't have to. We're not trying to convert people. You know, what we're trying to do is we're in it for the long run, and that's what's really important, is that in the long run we are trying to make affinities with people, and you can invite them to the one at the university over there, and that one I will, you know, speak at a much lower level in terms of that more general audience, and they might enjoy it and tell them to come and say that. I mean, I know about that group, and they're very open-minded. That's probably one of the most open-minded types of people that there are. And so I just tell them I love to. I love what they're about, and welcome them to come and ask questions. You know, so definitely do that, and always just present what you know. Again, considering where the people at, and it will work. You don't have to dumb it down for them. You just take out the Sanskrit and everything else, but it will work. So anyway.
Thank
Sorry
you.
about my clock. I finally fixed it, and now it's working. I forgot to silence it. Yes, Rosalind.
Master Gilbert, Amitabha, may I ask, when we chant the Nian Fo, Namo Amitabha, some people like my mom and myself, we cry. So it's worrying. Is there something I should know about?
No. I mean, because it's a natural expression. There sometimes we cry because there's a joy to it, that of making a connection with with the Buddha. You know, you see sometimes people that run into one of their idols. I'm not saying this just as an example. Maybe some movie star, you know, that they saw, and they're so. Who's the one? The I think she's Malaysian. She won the Academy Award. Anyway, um, so somebody would run into her, or oh, they would be crying. They go, oh, I can't believe I met you. You know, you're so wonderful, or whatever, and they're crying. because they have tears of joy because they know her and they run into her. When one meditates, when one does the recitation of the name and you make a connection like that, it's as if the Buddha's present. Of course, you can cry because you feel this sincerity and this proximity to the Buddha. And so as you're reciting, you're not far from the Buddha. The Buddha can be right there. What Shifu used to say, the Buddha is in the present moment. So we always keep the Buddha in the present moment. By the Nianfo, it's natural. So you may feel that way, or it can be sometimes because of Kuan Yin, people might cry. A lot of times people will cry because then they begin to see the sadness of this life. But this is a little different. It's good that you mentioned this, Rosalind, because there's two different ways. One of them is where it's a sentimental type of a crying, where we feel so sad for all sentient beings and stuff, versus one that's so happy. There's a joy there that you've made a connection with the Buddha. This is good. This is something that you make a connection. The other one is a sentimental type of a crying for sentient beings. In this way, one can make a connection with Guan Yin, but we don't necessarily cry, for the sentient beings, but we demonstrate our interest in resolving the issues that they have in a very sincere way, and understanding, just like Villa McCritty, his illness comes from the suffering of all sentient beings. So there's an interest there, and a loving interest, a metta that's there, along with the karuna, the compassion. So those are two different kinds of ways someone might cry by doing Nianfo or recitation of Guan Yin's name as well. So whichever ones, you just have to kind of look and see which one it is. I think it was the first one, which was just encountering the Buddha. There's nothing wrong with that at all. That's natural. Okay? But don't, like my master would say, but don't cry too much. Okay, but it's not necessarily bad because there's a sincerity there. So this is good, in terms of that. And we, like I say, I equate it with something very mundane, like meeting your somebody that you really liked or something. And I saw that a video of somebody at a baseball game. This one lady and this famous baseball player came up and talked to her, and she was crying because she never ever thought that that he would come up to the stands and talk to her. So it's natural. It's okay. I think the Buddha would be a better player than Otani, but we'll never get that chance to find out. So, okay. Anybody else? Last question? No? All right, you guys. I'll let you go. Thank you for staying in and listening to this, and I will talk to you guys later. Okay.
Thank you, Gilbert.
Oh, you're all welcome.
Gilbert, what should be the title of today's talk?
I'm sorry, you have to talk really loud.
The title of today's
Oh,